Welcome everyone to another edition of Willow's Weather Briefing. Today is Saturday, May 17th, 2025. We have a lot of active weather upcoming, severe thunderstorms and heavy rainfall potential in areas of New England, as well as the central to southern plains. We also have another storm system coming in the west, associated with another upper level trough, causing unsettled weather, severe thunderstorms, and flash flooding risks across the central and southern plains, and also points east towards the Midwest and Mid-South. We also have record heat in the Gulf Coast, primarily areas such as southern Texas, across into southwestern Louisiana, and also Florida. So here is a look at our satellite. We have this low pressure system that was associated with our severe weather outbreak yesterday, and we have an upcoming upper level trough starting to move its way into the western United States. So here's our storm reports yesterday. Widespread severe weather outbreak, a lot of hail and tornadoes initially, growing upscale into an MCS. As per usual in a classic severe weather outbreak, we've had multiple strong tornadoes, including one in St. Louis along that warm front, one around Bloomington, Indiana, and also plenty in the southern United States along the mid-Mississippi River Valley into the Ohio Valley. So, very good forecast by the Storm Prediction Center. Applaud them. And a very prolific outbreak yesterday for sure. Here's our drought map here. The solid lines demarcate the areas of greatest concern, greatest impacts from drought. Here's our current watches and warnings. We still have lingering severe thunderstorm watches in areas that are just up downstream of that training front and MCS here in areas such as North Carolina, upper South Carolina, and portions of the southeast. We also have frost advisories and freeze warnings in portions of the northern plains, which did see very hot temperatures not too long ago, so a big swing for them, and also a red flag warning for portions of the southwest. Here's our surface map here. Severe thunderstorms are possible in areas such as New England and also portions of the southeast associated with this low pressure system. The area to the south is focused along this front that's pushing through the United States right now, and this one over here in New England is associated with this warm front lifting northward. Also have that critical fire weather risk in the southeast. Day 2, we have the cold front continuing to push cooler weather into portions of the northeast, but we have another low pressure system coming in to the central Rockies and into the central plains, causing severe weather widespread across the central to southern plains, as well as the flash flooding threat. Day 3, that severe weather threat sort of expands as we get another low pressure system at a similar place to, on Monday, associated with a widespread severe weather risk and also a flash flooding threat. Here's our excessive rainfall outlook. Day 1, slight risk over the northeast and a marginal risk associated with that southern mode of severe weather. We expect 1 inch per hour rain rates with any rounds of convection that may train over in areas such as the northeast, and also up to 2 inches per hour down here in the southern U.S., though, since convection is unsure to, train over each other, and we're kind of not expecting rain to consistently fall at that rate, so marginal risk down here. Slight risk of excessive rainfall in portions of the central plains into the Ozarks region. Again, multiple rounds of convection may induce 1 inch plus per hour rates over in these areas. And kind of the same story on day 3, more expansive slight risk associated with training convection. Day 4, again, I believe this is, again, the same reason why we have the slight risk, multiple rounds of convection. The WPC was actually considering a moderate risk upgrade for the southern portions of the slight risk, but we just have to continue to look out for that. And marginal risk on day 5 as the storm system finally moves off, way off to the east. Here's our fire weather outlook. Critical fire weather risk for portions of the southwest to the desert southwest. That fire weather risk will continue into day 2 tomorrow, and also day 3 and day 4. Here's our convective outlook. Let's start at day 1. We have an enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms in areas in northern Texas. This includes cities like Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, Plano, Garland. We also have an expansive slight risk over here in the southern plains, including cities like Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Shreveport, Little Rock. This is mainly associated with a hail risk, 30% hatched there, and might see some big hail in these regions. We also have a slight risk of severe thunderstorms over here in New England, primarily associated with a wind and hail risk, non-significant. Our day 2 outlook, we have an enhanced risk across the southern plains and in cities like Wichita, Topeka, Lawrence, Enid. And we have an expansive slight risk over here in the central to southern plains associated with cities like DFW, Oklahoma City, Kansas City, and Omaha. This is mainly associated with a 10-hatch tornado risk here in Kansas. The 10-hatched is up here right now in Kansas because of the storm coverage concerns, but this 10-hatched may expand south if storm coverage becomes more clear. And also associated with that is a big old significant hail risk in these areas, associated with a lot of instability in the atmosphere. Here's our day 3 outlook, more expansive enhanced risk over here. Significant severe weather threats ahead for Monday. I've been talking about Monday for quite a while now, and it looks like our greatest threats will actually end up being Monday. But again, tomorrow looks equally concerning across these areas, and this risk will just expand eastward on Monday. Here's our day 4 through 8 outlook. We have a 30% risk across the southern United States in areas such as northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, and into Tennessee. Predictability is too low for any areas eastward. This is, of course, associated with our eastward moving trough. So let's look at our heat risk today. Again, extreme heat risks across much of southern Texas, and this kind of expands across the Gulf Coast of southern Texas all the way towards western Louisiana, and much of the Gulf Coast will experience above average heat throughout today and into next week. This also includes areas such as Florida as well, and just in general across the Gulf Coast. We should see a depletion of this heat finally by the middle of next week. For areas that are of most concern, let's go ahead and look at San Antonio here. Again, highs still reaching near or above 100 degrees for a while with little to no overnight relief. Further down southwest towards the border, again, well over 100 degrees with little to no overnight relief. Still much above average for these typically hot areas. Here's our extended range hazards outlook. We have a broad area of flooding concern, as well as those areas of severe weather that we saw earlier. And we also have heat risks down here in areas such as southern Florida and southern Texas. So let's go ahead and talk models. Let's go ahead and look at our broad overview first. Here's our 500 millibar height, our upper level winds. You can see that this upper level low that was responsible for our severe weather episodes these past few days gonna move off to the east and get out of our hairs, but we have another system upcoming. We have this troughing here in the western United States that's going to move into the plains, sort of eject into the Rockies, causing a very potent surface response here in eastern or in central to eastern Colorado along the Rockies, which will eventually bring us the ingredients necessary for severe weather tomorrow. But this trough isn't done yet, kind of does a double barrel look. It rotates around, and then we have a regime of enhanced flow for Monday as well, a more broad regime, a larger trough just impinging into these areas. And as we move forward, that trough will move its way eastward. We have areas of enhanced flow over the mid-Mississippi River Valley down towards the southeast. So a lot of the areas that had severe weather yesterday actually look to be the areas of concern for Tuesday as well, along with areas further south as well into the southeast. That's where the 30% risk is over here. And that trough will eventually move in or move out of the U.S., allowing us to relish in a less active pattern for at least a little bit. Let's look at our surface low pressures and surface precipitation. We have our low pressure system associated with that first low up here in the northern Great Lakes. That is going to move east, bringing us some possibility of severe weather in the northeast, and that will move off. Of course, we have convection associated with that front and dry line set up here into the southern plains today. But we're going to move forward and see how that western trough enacts our surface response. Here you go, deepening 987 millibar, or not, yeah, 987 millibar surface low here. There's going to be a potent dry line around western Oklahoma up towards Kansas and down in Texas, causing our severe weather on Sunday. And because that trough kind of double backs a little bit, we're going to have the surface low kind of meander around the plains and then sort of reinvigorate in Colorado by Monday here, causing widespread severe weather on this day as well. That low will finally move off east, associated with that propagation of the upper level wave east as well. And again, we see potent severe weather ahead for much of these areas that were demarcated by that extended range day 4, 15 and 30%. The weather will again move off towards the east, possibly bringing additional severe weather towards the mid-Atlantic, up the east coast as well. Let's go ahead and focus in a little bit to our wrist today. Let's go ahead and zoom into the south central United States. Let's just go ahead and look at our fields here. Let's go ahead and look at our dew points. And as you can see here, dry line set up across central Texas up towards western Oklahoma. That is going to be our focus as that dry line tightens. And convective response all over Texas and Oklahoma today. Possibly a messier storm mode up here towards the stationary front / cold front because of training convection. Let's go ahead and look at our precip type map. Of course, precipitation is pretty likely, and initiation is, again, pretty likely for these areas. Let's go ahead and look at our surface-based cape. Actually, let's look at our mixed layer cape. And yeah, big instability values. I don't really know what this pocket of low instability values is here in Texas. But again, broad swath of instability values, 3,000 plus joules per kilogram here, which will have no problem sustaining storms. And even over here, continuing with peak diurnal heating. It looks like initiation, according to the NAM at least, going to be pretty early. So these areas will still have time to bake in that surface-based sun right now. So plenty of instability. Let's go ahead and look at our bulk shear values. Pretty decent. Our kind of jet impingement is a little farther north, so but we still have good enough bulk shear values, upwards of 50 knots, to bring us some supercells. So looking at our storm relative helicity, our low-level storm relative helicity, this is really important for an ingredient for a hazard like tornadoes. Not too much today because of the meager surface response, so our tornado threat generally is going to be pretty low today. go ahead and take a look at some soundings here. Let's go ahead and look at our reflectivity so that we don't accidentally put it in some storms. Let's just take a sounding just ahead of these storms here in Texas. Again, pretty warm in the low levels, pretty high low level instability, which, you know, may be enough to spawn a few brief tornadoes, but generally this isn't what we look for in a tornado sounding. Not too much low level shear, and big cape values. In fact, this might be a little bit too much low level instability that we're kind of looking for in terms of hail risk, but due to the fact that our storm relative inflow, which is what the storm is feeling, and our low level shear is pretty small, I believe that this low level instability will be a little bit offset by the low storm relative inflow and also low level shear. Very straight photographs up here to bring some big hailers. And this is around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Okay, so moving into tomorrow, let's go ahead and move our region closer to the Central Plains. We're going to move forward up to Sunday. Pretty upscale convection here, progged by the NAM at least, but we're just going to ignore that for now because cams are pretty unreliable at the spatial coverage of storms, at least, you know, at any decent range away. So again, let's take a look at our dew points. Really robust warp sector here. Dry line progged right over here. Even a semblance of a dry line bulge here, which can focus our area of severe thunderstorms, especially areas just north of that dry line bulge right over in this area. And that's why we see convection, widespread convection right away in the areas just north of that dry line bulge. 70s dew points reaching up to southern Kansas according to the NAM. Curious on what the HRRR is progging for this time frame in terms of dew points, since it does mix a bit more. Still 70s dew points reaching up to southern Kansas, so that's a good sign in terms of moisture. Stick with the HRRR. Let's go towards the mixed layer Cape. Up here we see our instability values rising, and up to 3,000, 4,000 joules per kilogram across these areas. Very sufficient for severe weather. Bulk shear values, I assume this is going to be elevated since we start to see that upper level response. And as you can see here, pretty good bulk shear values throughout the area. It's hard to see because of this feedback down here, but it seems like upwards of 50 plus knots of bulk shear. And our bulk shear vectors, which is kind of a proxy for storm motion, you know, you could imagine if your forcing is over here and your shear vectors are perpendicular, storms will sort of train off of that boundary pretty quickly, and our storm mode may become more discrete. So this is a good sign in terms of storm mode. Your shear vectors are definitely perpendicular to the dry line. With dry lines in particular, since it's subtler forcing, kind of want shear vectors to be a bit closer to 45 degrees so that it takes time in that dry line circulation to initiate storms. However, because we have pretty potent forcing, synoptically speaking, and we don't really have any concerns like capping, at least up in these regions, these perpendicular shear vectors should be sufficient for the initial lift, for storms to reach their level of free convection and to move off into more discrete modes. Here's our low-level storm relative helicity, and very high values initially. That doesn't really count though, and initially pretty low with the exception of areas near the surface low up here, but our warm sector is kind of pinched off up here, so very brief but definitely area of concern for tornadoes up here. But where our warm sector is wider, our storm relative helicity really pops off in towards the night because of the nocturnal response of the low-level jet. So we're definitely looking at an increase of the tornado threat as that low-level jet increases towards nightfall. And it really depends on the storm mode at this point. If things remain discrete at this time, then we could see a significant tornado threats, especially significant long track tornado threat, really come to fruition, at least towards nightfall. So that is tomorrow's threat. Let's just take a few soundings here. The HRRR, and we're going to go with reflectivity here. Let's take one in that risk in Kansas. And pretty meager instability at this point. I mean, still sufficient for severe weather, but lower than I would anticipate. Your temperatures will probably be a bit higher, so I don't think that this is entirely a realistic vision on what it is, on what reality will show. Also, we saw those 70s dew points creeping up to the eastern Kansas. I wouldn't be surprised if our dew points are a little bit higher too. So take this thermodynamic profile with a grain of salt. But as you can see, long photograph associated with that jet that's sort of impinging into the area and sufficient low-level shear for tornadoes. It's even just at 22Z. We expect an expansion of that storm relative helicity as that nocturnal low-level jet starts to make its way or starts to have its effects in these areas. We're going to take a sounding as well in southwestern Nebraska. This regime seems pretty pretty short-lived in terms of the threats, but still could be a short-lived potent threat here. As you can see, the shear values are pretty high, so if anything can initiate and become robust, and we could see some tornado threat up here in southwestern Nebraska, closer to the surface low as well. Maybe just try to get one. Again, the thermodynamic environment is a bit wonky, but again, take this thermodynamic profile with a grain of salt. Further south into Oklahoma, initiation is a little bit in question, but we will see sufficient profiles for all hazards down here if things initiate. And finally, let's go ahead and look at our threat for Monday. I don't think I'm going to take any soundings just yet for this regime, but looks like the NAM is very, very progressive with this look. Let's look at the GFS, see if it does a bit better. Yeah, the GFS is doing a bit better, so let's just stick with that one too. Let's go ahead and look at our associated environments here. Again, dew points are going to reinvigorate after Sunday's convection pretty quickly because of this. The surface low is kind of going to stay here, so it's going to just continue to churn Gulf moisture up north, so I don't think we'll have any moisture concerns. And dew points well up. Even 70s dew points prodded by the GFS up towards northern Missouri, so very wide warm sector here to work with on Monday. Let's look at I guess we'll look at our surface base cape for Monday. Instability values pretty high for this area. Definitely still concerning instability values over here, upwards of 3,000 plus joules per kilogram. And let's just look at bulk shear for now. Taking a look at our bulk shear vectors, we have enhanced flow aloft on Monday here across areas such as Kansas, Oklahoma, southwestern Missouri, and northwestern Arkansas, well over 50 knots, sufficient for severe weather. All right, so that's going to be it for modeling. Here's our 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. Here, valid May 22nd to May 26th. We have much below average temperatures for the eastern United States and above average temperatures for the southwestern to intermountain west regions. Also above average temperatures in areas such as southern Florida. Here's our 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook. Mostly near normal, near the heartland of the United States, essentially United States. Below average for areas such as the West and Great Basin, and below average for portions of the Gulf Coast. Above average for the northeastern United States. So that is going to be it for today. Pretty active pattern ahead. Please heed all weather service warnings pretty carefully these next few days, especially if you live in the risk areas. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to watch more of my briefings. And of course, if you have any specific concerns about your area, please look at your local broadcast or National Weather Service meteorologists. I have tons of resources down below for you to look at if you want any specifics regarding your area. Please be careful these next few days. Looks like a very active pattern ahead, and we wish best for the people who were impacted by the severe weather yesterday. Thank you and have a great day.